Most people go through life reacting. They make decisions based on urgency, emotion, or whatever feels easiest in the moment. And that's exactly why they stay stuck. They choose jobs based on what pays the bills today instead of thinking about where they actually want to be in 5 years. They stay in relationships that no longer serve them because they fear change more than stagnation. They make business moves without a real plan, just chasing short-term opportunities without understanding long-term consequences. And that's why most people end up exhausted, frustrated, and stuck in cycles they can't seem to break. But here's the thing. High-level strategists, elite entrepreneurs, and top investors, they don't think like this at all. They don't just react to what's happening today. They think 5, 10, even 20 steps ahead. They see patterns that others don't. They understand that every decision is connected to something bigger. And the good news? You can train your mind to think the same way. Today, I'm going to break down how you can start thinking like a strategist so you can make better decisions in business, relationships, and life. Let's get into it. The problem is that most people operate in reactive thinking mode, meaning they're not actually making decisions. They're just responding to whatever is happening right now. And here's the dangerous part. Reactive thinking keeps you trapped in survival mode. You're always playing catch up, always adjusting, always feeling like you're just barely staying afloat. You see this everywhere. People stay in jobs they hate because they're afraid of the unknown. They stay in relationships that drain them because it's easier than starting over. They make business moves based on what's immediately profitable instead of what's actually strategic. And then 5 years later, they look up and wonder how they ended up so far from where they wanted to be. Why does this happen? Because most people aren't trained to think beyond the present moment. And if you don't control your thinking, the world will do it for you. So how do you break free? You need to stop reacting and start thinking in layers. That's where the 3-tier decision-making model comes in. There's a simple framework that top decision makers use to eliminate distractions, filter out bad opportunities, and move with confidence. I call it the 3-tier decision-making model. It works like this. Tier 1, short-term thinking and emotional trap. Most people get stuck here. They only focus on what feels right in the moment. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're running a business, and you're offered a deal that pays well today but forces you to compromise your long-term vision. If you're thinking short-term, you take the money because it's an easy win. But 6 months later, you realize you've built something that doesn't align with what you actually wanted. Short-term thinking makes you react emotionally. It's based on fear, urgency, and short-lived rewards. To avoid this, ask yourself, am I making this choice because it's right or because it's easy? Tier 2, midterm thinking, calculated moves. Midterm thinkers start playing 3 to 6 months ahead. They don't just ask, does this decision feel good today? They ask, how does this decision impact the next 6 months of my life? Think about investing. Smart investors don't chase quick wins. They build momentum. Instead of dumping money into risky stocks for a fast return, they place strategic bets that compound over time. In relationships, a midterm thinker doesn't just look for someone who's fun to be around today. They think, are we growing in the same direction? Will this relationship make my life better in the long run? The key to midterm thinking is asking, will this choice make future decisions easier or harder? Tier 3, long-term thinking, where high achievers win. This is where elite decision makers separate themselves from the rest. Long-term thinkers aren't just looking 1 or 2 years ahead. They're making choices today that will create freedom and impact 5, 10, even 20 years from now. Instead of asking, what's profitable right now, they ask, what will allow me to build wealth sustainably? Instead of asking, how can I win this argument, they ask, how do I build a relationship where I never have to argue in the first place? And here's the thing. The more long-term you think, the fewer decisions you actually have to make, because every move compounds. If you train yourself to think past the short-term distractions, you'll start making smarter, cleaner, and more powerful decisions. So let's bring this all together. Most people live in reactive mode. They let urgency and emotions drive their decisions. And because of that, they end up stuck in the same cycles for years. But if you want to make a smarter moves, win in business, and build relationships that actually last, you have to start thinking in layers. Short-term thinking keeps you stuck. Mid-term thinking gets you moving. Long-term thinking makes you unstoppable. So here's your challenge. Think about a decision you've been struggling with. Ask yourself, am I making this choice because it's easy or because it sets me up for something bigger? Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. And if you want to go deeper into the topic, check out this month's issue of The Start Perspective, where I break down real-world case studies of how the framework plays out in business and relationships. Next week we're talking about why high achievers struggle in relationships and how to fix it. Don't miss it. Subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Before we wrap up, I pulled up a question that ties perfectly into today's topic. What's the single biggest mistake people make when trying to think long-term? The biggest mistake? Thinking long-term without actually committing to it. People love the idea of long-term vision, but when it's time to take action, they fall back into short-term comfort. They say they want to build a business that lasts, but then chase quick cash instead of solid foundations. They say want a strong relationship, but then let small fights destroy trust instead of investing in long-term connection. They say they want financial freedom, but then spend impulsively instead of making patient, smart investments. Here's the truth. Long-term thinking is painful at first. It requires sacrifice. It means choosing discipline over comfort. But in the end, it's what gives you actual freedom. So if you're serious about changing how you think, don't just commit in theory, commit in action. Drop a comment. What's one decision you're making now that your future self will thank you for? There was a farmer in a small village. One day his horse ran away. The villagers said, "What bad luck?" The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The villagers said, "What great luck?" The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses, but he fell and broke his leg. The villagers said, "What terrible luck?" The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A week later, soldiers came to the village to draft young men into the army. But because the farmer's son had a broken leg, he was spared. The villagers said, "What amazing luck?" And the farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The difference between reactive thinkers and strategic thinkers is perspective. Short-term thinkers get caught up in every up and down. Strategic thinkers understand that every event, good or bad, is just part of a bigger picture. When you think long-term, nothing can shake you. If you want to learn more about this kind of thinking, check out this month's issue of The Start Perspective, where I break down real-world examples of how high-level strategists make decisions. And next week, we are talking about why high achievers struggle in relationships and how to fix that. Don't miss it. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.